Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the first day of the Champions Showdown, which is being held here in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, this is an event that has happened on and off over the years, but this year it is back with a brand new and exciting format where you have matches of 3 games, 1 game of Blitz, 1 game of Rapid, and 1 game of Semi-Classical. Now, the time controls are Blitz, 3 minutes with a 2-second increment, Rapid with 15 minutes and a 10-second increment, and last but not least, a Semi-Classical game with 60 minutes and 15-second increment for move number 1. So, let's jump right into the action. Now, in the first match, I'm playing against my compatriot, Fabiano Caruana, and we're playing the 3+2 Blitz game, and I have the black pieces. So the game starts out with e4, I play e5, knight f3, knight to c6, and now we get the move bishop b5. Here I play the move knight g e7, and Fabiano decides to castle. Now I play knight g6, we get d4, takes, c6, bishop e2, and here I play the move queen b6, offering the trade of the queens. Fabiano plays queen c3, I go queen b4, we get queen d3, queen d6, and now we do a little bit of a dance before I play the move bishop e7. Fabiano plays bishop e3, I play knight f4, bishop f3, and here I play queen f6. Fabiano plays knight d2, and now I castle my king out of the center. Now at this point, we've finished the opening phase of the game. Both sides have developed their pieces, but white has a slight advantage due to the lack of development, where I have this bishop on c8 that is passive. So Fabiano goes g3. I play the move knight to e6, we get bishop g2, and here I play knight c5. Now at this point, we've both burned about 1.5 minutes on the clock, but as you can probably start to tell, I'm taking over a little bit here as white has some issues with the weak pawn on b2 as well as the queen on b3. So Fabiano plays move queen c4, and now I play his move b6, reinforcing the knight on c5 and threatening to play bishop a6. Let's just say white goes h3, bishop a6, and suddenly white will lose either the queen or the rook. So Fabiano plays queen d4, I go queen g6, we get a4, and now I play the move f5. Now, the logic behind this move f5 is I'm trying to open up this long diagonal, but additionally, because I have this pawn on c6, I would love to get a position like this, for example, where I can play d5, building a bit of a big black center. So I'm trying to remove this pawn so I can play d5, and here Fabiano trades and goes for the move rook e1. Now, this move is simply a blunder, but note that both of us are getting a little bit low on time here. So when Fabiano plays rook e1, he actually is hanging the pawn on c2. So here I go bishop f6, queen b4, and now after the move queen takes c2 in this position, I have an extra pawn on the d file, and I am simply much better. Not to mention, when we look at the clock situation, I'm up 25 seconds. So Fabiano plays queen c4, I trade, and now I go d5 here, building the big black center. We get knight d6, and here I play the move bishop d7. Fabiano goes rook a2, trying to guard this pawn from being captured, and now I play the move knight d3. We get rook d1, knight b4, and Fabiano plays rook a3. Now in this position, I play the move knight to c2 very, very quickly, and this is a spot where I could have simply ended the game immediately with this move bishop e7, as the knight on d6 is simply trapped here. If white goes knight b7, I can play rook a b8, and this knight is going nowhere. I will win the knight, I'll be up a piece in an endgame, and I will win the game. Instead, I play the move knight c2 here, and this is a move that I play very quickly on instinct, but it is a moment when I probably should have thought. As you can tell here, I have 51 seconds, Fabiano has 5 seconds, and everything is going my way, but I just blitz this move knight c2. We get rook b3, I trade, and now I play the move rook a d8, and here Fabiano goes b4. Now at this point, I still am much better. I'm up 50 seconds versus 5 seconds, but after the move bishop g4 and f3, the game starts to become a little bit tricky here, because now when I go bishop h5, Fabiano plays knight f5, and here white has ideas like f4 and g4, there's rook e6 as well as b5, and even though it's winning, I have to be a touch careful. So here I play the move rook fe8, Fabiano trades, and now he goes b5 here, trying to undermine my big black center. Now at this point, it's still winning, but it's getting to the point where I have to be very accurate, and I use quite a bit of time before playing this move bishop g6, and this is simply the wrong move. What I should have played here was the move c5, simply gambiting this pawn on d5, because after c4, c3, and c2, this pawn is rushing up the c file here. I have the open e file as well, and as you can tell from the computer evaluation, this is simply GG. Instead, I go bishop g6, Fabiano plays knight d6, rook e6, and now we get the move knight c8. Now, this position is still winning for me, but Fabiano has created quite a bit of counterplay here. The pawns in the center are being undermined. The knight on c8 hits the pawn on a7, and already here, it's going to require some precision. You'll also notice that Fabiano has maintained his time. He hasn't gotten down to 1 or 2 seconds here, and now all the pressure is on me to try and win the game. So here I play the move d4. This is simply a bad move. Fabiano plays f4. He could have gone bishop h3 here to attack the rook and the pawn at the same time. Instead, he goes f4. Now I play the move c5 here. Fabiano plays bishop d5, and I decide to sack the rook with bishop to f7. Takes, knight a7, and the move c4. Now at this point, my general assumption was I'm still have a bit of time on the clock, but I have 2 pawns here in the center of the board that I'm rushing up, and if I push the p, I should win. But it's not quite as clear as it seems. So Fabiano plays move a5 here. I go d3, and now Fabiano plays knight c6, stopping me from playing bishop to g4 check. I play the move c3, but now after the move pawn takes pawn, c2, and rook f1, all of a sudden white has a pawn going up the board. White's trying to queen this pawn, so even though I have 2p in the center here, it's still very, very complicated. So I go d2. Fabiano plays b7. I queen. He queens. King f7. We get check. King g6. And now Fabiano plays move knight e5. Here I take the knight, and Fabiano plays queen takes bishop on e5. If white were to take with the pawn here, after pawn takes pawn, I can go queen d4, checking the king. If white plays the move rook to f2 here, I have bishop to c4, cutting off the queen from this queening square. The rook is also pinned. I'm going to get a queen, and I will win the game. So Fabiano takes with the queen, I sack my queen, I get a new queen, and now it's time to take stock of the position where I have a queen, bishop, and 2 pawns, and Fabiano has a queen and 4 pawns. Now, even here, time is kind of getting very tight here, but the problem for me is that I have to find a plan. Fabiano will simply dilly-dally with his king, and he'll just go back and forth from the side. So I go check, we get king g1, check, king here, I play check, king e3, check, king d4, and now I play the move queen b4. Now, what I think I should have played here was this move h6 here, simply creating some escape squares for my king, either on f7 or h7. And I think if I had done this, I would have had a good chance to win, although apparently, in this position, it's not correct. So I played check. We get he goes king e3. I check. We get king d4, check, king e3. And actually, sorry, you guys, this is a position where I thought I could play h6 here, although apparently here white is okay after queen e4, which I did not see at all in the game. Now, obviously, at this point, it's a mad scramble. Both of us are low on time, but here I end up playing the move bishop f5. Fabiano plays g4. I play queen to b3 check, and this is the moment at which the chances of winning the game slip away. Now, what I should have played here was queen d3, king f2, and now after the move bishop to d7, apparently black is better or winning technically, but with all these checks on h5 and g5 going after my king on g6, it is simply a situation where with 5 to 10 seconds on the clock, you don't know what's happening. So I end up playing queen b3, I go bishop d3, Fabiano checks, he goes check, check, and now we end up drawing by repetition here after we repeat with king f7 and queen c7. So, what is the takeaway from this game? Now, the big takeaway from this game is that, quite frankly, I had this game won at multiple moments, but ultimately, as in the event which I recently played in Germany, when I got low on time, I simply could not keep it together. The pressure of trying to make these quick moves caught up with me, and it is a very, very disappointing draw. But having said that, I have had some experience, unfortunately, with this in the recent event that I played in Germany, so it's not as disappointing as perhaps it could be ordinarily. So the first game ends in a draw. So that means we move to a rapid game of 15 minutes with 10-second increment. Now in that game, I would play the Petrov defense with black once again and make a draw, which is going to take us to the third and final game of the day, where we're now playing the semi-classical game with 1 hour on the clock, game in 60 minutes with a 15-second increment. Now, one of the oddities is because this match is 3 games, all the matches will be, you have 2 games where you'll play with one color and 1 game with the opposing color. So I played the Blitz and Rapid with black, and now I play the classical game with the white pieces. So here I play the move b3. Now, it may come as a surprise because obviously this is game 60. This is a little bit slower game. Why am I still playing this move? Now, it's not necessarily intended as a criticism of the event itself, but I will point out that none of these games are being FIDE rated. So because none of these games are rated and there's not a whole lot on the line besides the money, frankly, for the results, I felt like it's a good opportunity to try and experiment in a low-risk situation. So I go b3. Fabiano plays d5, bishop b2, and now we get the move bishop g4. Here I play the move h3, bishop h5, and now I play the move g3, and Fabiano goes for this move c5. I go bishop g2, we get the move knight to c6, and now in this position, I play the move knight to f3, trying to stop Fabiano from getting a big black center. So we get the move knight f6. Now I decide to play the move knight e5, we get the trade, Fabiano goes e6, and here I play the move c4, trying to create a lot of pressure on both of the diagonals for the two b's. Fabiano plays bishop e7, and now I play this move pawn takes pawn. Now I've probably had positions like this or similar to this on many, many occasions over the years in online chess, but in this situation I decide to play pawn takes pawn. Now ordinarily I would have played the move d3, castles, and either knight to c3 or knight to d2 here. Position is very, very balanced, probably equal. I would say game is very likely going to peter out into a draw, but I spent a lot of time here and decided I wanted to go for something more interesting with d4. Now, some people may say this is copiant for me saying that I ended up making these decisions, but ultimately, as I mentioned just about a minute ago in this recap, with nothing on the line except for the cash prize, it doesn't feel like in the spirit of the event to simply make a boring draw. You should try to be creative, you should try to experiment, see what will work or what won't, and that's why I went for this move d4. So we get castles. Now I castle, and Fabiano plays knight to e4, and here I play the move g4. Now you will notice, in this position, I spent 30 minutes before playing this move d4, and ultimately I think this was probably the biggest mistake I made in the game in many ways. So we get knight e4, I go g4, bishop g6, f3, and now Fabiano plays the move knight to g5. Now to add insult to injury, when I was spending my 30 minutes calculating this position, I actually looked at this, and the only move that I had considered here was knight to f6 or f6. I had not even thought about knight g5, so if I had blitzed this line out right away, I could have saved myself 15, 20, 25 minutes on the clock, instead of ending up in this situation where now I'm a little bit low on time, and the situation is getting very complicated. So I go knight c3. Fabiano plays rook c8, and now I play the move king h1, and this is simply a bad move. Now, this position, my initial idea was to play f4 here, and I thought that after knight e4, takes, something like this, I could play the move d5, bishop d6, and then probably trade and go queen d2 and make a draw. I also thought that perhaps I could even take and go king g2 and maybe be a little bit worse, but with decent chances. Now, the reason I mentioned this line is, as you're about to see, we're going to get a version of this where I've used more time, and it's even worse than this exact position. So I go king h1, Fabiano plays rook e8, and now I decide to go for f4 with 11 minutes left on the clock. I did not really want to play this move. Initially, my idea was to play rook c1 here, but I thought there were all kinds of tricks like pawn takes pawn, knight e6, maybe even f6 here, and so with such limited time, I decided to go for the simplification with f4 now. We get knight e4, takes, and here I play the move pawn takes pawn, Fabiano takes, and now I make a very serious error when I play the move rook c1 almost instantly. Now, as soon as I played the move rook c1, I realized it was a huge mistake here. The move that I think I should have played is this move g5 here to try and stop black from ever being able to push this pawn to f6. And after, say, queen takes queen, let's just say I take here. Black is still better in this position after bishop e3, but without this move f6 to kick the bishop, I end up with this wooden shield here on e5 that is guarding all the diagonals, and the position should be completely fine, even though I can't draw any arrows. So I go rook c1. As soon as I played this move, I realized that Fabiano could play what he did in the game with queen h4. Frankly, even takes here, actually not takes, sorry, f6 here, really concerned me too. Something like bishop b2, takes, and rook and bishop to e3 here, and I thought I was in quite a bit of trouble. Fabiano instead plays queen h4, king g2, now he plays rook d8, and here I have to go queen e1. I'd love to move my queen to c2, but now there's a very nasty fossil here with bishop to f2. The rook attacks the queen. If I sack the queen, there's queen g3, checking the king, and then queen takes h3. It's uh-oh spaghetti-o time. King gets trapped, and I lose the game. So I go for the move queen to e1. Fabiano trades, and now he plays the move f6. Now again, if I could put this pawn on g5 here and stop this f6 move, the bishop on e5 is ideally placed here. It's a great wooden shield, but because I haven't played g5, now after the move f6, I have to move the bishop, and after bishop e3, the pawn on f4 is weak. They're threats like kebabs on the 7th rank here. Both rooks on the open files, and at this point, I'm desperate to hope for a miracle and save the game. So I go rook c4. Fabiano trades, and now he takes the pawn, and here I play the move bishop c1, trying to angle for a potential rook and pawn endgame. Fabiano plays bishop d2, I go rook d1, and now he plays move e3. Now, even though it seems as though the dust is settled and I'm a little bit worse here, the big issue I have is that I only have 4 minutes on the clock here. So we get king f7. I play bishop a3, b6, and here I go for the move c5. Now, at this point, I had a feeling that I was still in a lot of trouble in this endgame, but at least my moves should be pretty simple here, as the only thing I can really try to do is activate this bishop, use an open b file, or push the pawn. With only the pawn push ideas, the bishop on the diagonal, the rook coming to b1, there's nothing else for me to think about. So we get b5. I play c6. We get rook c8. Apparently here, rook to b1, a6, and king e4, and white's maybe still playing in this game. I simply was low on time. I didn't see this idea, so I thought I had to go for c6 instead. Get rook c8, rook bishop c5, and now Fabiano plays the move a6, keeping a 2-on-1 majority on the queen side. I take the pawn, he takes, I check, king g6, takes, rook c6, and now I play the move rook d3. Now, we've reached an endgame here where I'm down a pawn on the queen side, but at least temporarily I have ideas like rook a3 or rook d7, and I can hope for a little bit of a miracle. So Fabiano plays the move h5. Now, this move is not a bad move, but in this position, if he had played the move b4 here, going for rook c3, black is probably going to be winning this game very, very soon. Instead, we get h5. I go king f3. Fabiano plays h4. Important moment, of course, because if you trade the pawns, this means it's one less pawn on the board. And generally, when you're playing endgames, you want to keep as many pawns on the board, especially in rook and pawn endgames where you have more material. So Fabiano goes h4. I play rook to a3 here. At this point, I'm trying to blitz out my moves. I actually thought that rook b3 was perhaps a little bit better after I played rook a3, but ultimately I played rook a3. Now, the idea behind rook a3 is to put pressure on this pawn on a6 so that black can't easily activate the rook. Fabiano goes b4, I play rook a4, he checks, I go e3, and now we get the move rook c2. Here I take the pawn on b4, and Fabiano plays this move rook takes a2. Now, there's nothing wrong with rook takes a2 here, but rook to h2 also would have been winning, as you can capture the pawn on h3. We get rook a2. I play rook b6, Fabiano goes a5, rook a6, a4, and here I play the move king f4. Now, in this position, you'll notice that I've been able to get a slight time advantage here. I have a minute and a half versus 48 seconds. Not that it matters because there's a 15-second increment, but at least here, there's no danger of overstepping. So Fabiano makes a huge error here when he plays this move a3. If Fabiano had played rook to f2 check, king e4, and rook to h2, this actually is a winning rook and pawn endgame, but it's very understandable why Fabiano didn't go for this, because I actually thought during the game, after takes, rook h3, and rook a5, I had a feeling that this might be a draw, because let's just say black goes rook h1, I get rook h5, and h3, something like this. My rook is guarded by the pawn, rook targets the pawn on h3, and this is a draw. But the reason that this is not actually a draw is after rook to a5 here, black can play this move rook to g3, king f4, rook to g1, and now if I go for the move rook to h5, trying to target the pawn, there's rook f1, king e4, and the crushing move, pawn to f5, checking the king. If I take with the pawn, I lose the rook, and if I move my king after takes and king g5, followed by g6, black is simply pushing the g-pawn up the board, and the king is cut off by one row, so black will win. Fabiano plays a3, and now after move g5, somehow out of nowhere, I've gotten a miracle here, and as you can tell, the evaluation is that of a draw. So Fabiano plays rook f2 check here. At this point, I think what Fabiano initially assumed was winning was rook to a1, but after takes, if black goes a2, I can take and then hide the king on the e file. There's a pawn shielding the rook from checking the king, and now it's a draw. And if after g takes f6, black takes, what I think initially Fabiano thought was that here after king e4 and a2, he would be winning simply because inevitably black will be able to push this pawn. If I ever take, there's a rook e1 check and black queens the pawn. If I take with a king, same thing, rook f1. And if I were to go e4, now black is pushing the white peepos and winning the game. But after g takes f6, I can go king g4 here, and after a2, now I can hide my king on the h file with the pawn in front of the king, so now there's no rook h1 check, and here the game will end peacefully. So Fabiano decides to play the move rook f2, I go king g4, check, takes, 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 and here we've reached an endgame with rook and 2 pawns versus rook and 2 pawns. Now this should be a draw 99 times out of 100, but there is one issue I have here, which is that my king is stuck on the rim. So Fabiano goes rook g1, and now I play the move rook to a5. Important move here, by the way, because if I play a move like rook a4, after king h6, suddenly there's no way to stop this checkmate. I go rook g4, g5, and the king can't escape. After takes, takes, my king gets mated on the rim. So I play rook a5 here. Fabiano goes king f7. One line which I was hoping for during the game, I did see it, is that if black were to play the move f5 here, I can go e4. Oh, I thought I could go e4 here because after takes, you can set up a Rosen trick here with rook g5, sacking the rook, and after rook takes rook, the game ends in a draw. Apparently, however, after e4, f4, black is winning here, which just goes to show that I am missing some things in this game. So, Fabiano goes king f7, and now I play e4 here. One important thing that I want to point out is that one thing that's really noteworthy is that if we ever get a position like this, where it's rook in 2 versus rook in 1, even though black has pawns on the g and the f file, this is a theoretical draw, and this is a position which I will draw basically every time. Now, it's important to note because I should be practical here and give up the e pawn, but instead, as you're about to see, I don't give up this pawn. Now, what I think I should have played here is something like rook to a4, and now after, say, king to e6, I can go rook g4, drawing the game, and after rook to e1, I should simply play king g4, sack the pawn, and make the draw. But I try to get cute here with e4, trying to keep both the pawns on the board. We get king e6, I go king h5, king f7, and here I play this move king h4. Now, this move does not lose the game, make no mistake about it, but once I go king h4, I'm trying to set up a weird threefold repetition, and this is just unnecessary. What I should have played here was rook to a7, king e6, and rook a5, and there is no chance that I ever lose this position. Instead, I go king h4. We get rook g2, I go rook b5, king g6, rook a5, king f7, and here I play the move rook b5. Now, again here, I still think I should have played the move king to h5, because now after rook b5 and g5, king h5, and rook g3, suddenly this is getting tricky where I'm going to lose this pawn on h3, and at this point, it's still a draw, but now the direction of the game has changed, and there are no obvious drawing plans. So I play rook b7, king e6, king g6, and now Fabiano takes. I check, we get king e5, and here I make a horrible mistake and lose the game when I take the pawn on f6. Now, this position is still a draw after rook to b5, because if black goes king f4, for example, after takes and g4, now I can simply push my e-pawn through. Let's say we get some position like g3, I can go check, king f2, and here I can simply sack my rook, push the pawn through, and after e7, king f3, king f7, I will push the pawn, black will have to sacrifice the rook, and the game will end in a draw. If black were to take the pawn on e4, it's important to note that after takes, g4, now I can start checking the king here. I actually just assumed that this was losing here because I thought the king could hide, but basically I can always check this king forever since this rook is on h3. If black ever goes to g3, king g5 will draw the game because I'll start checking again with my king right next to the pawn. And if black were to go for this move, actually black can't hide the king on h4. If black were able to get the king to h4, this would be winning. But whenever the king goes to g3, I will always play king g5. And so therefore, I just start checking the king forever. And there's nothing that Fabiano can do. But instead, I play rook f6. And this is a move that I played because I actually thought that this was a drawn endgame. I saw g4, but I thought that after rook to f1 here, this was just a draw. After king takes e4, because I have king g5, g3, king g4, g2, rook g1, rook h2, and king g3 winning the pawn. Alas, however, there's this move g3, and now suddenly I'm just losing the game here, because if I play the move king to g5, now black can go g2 here, and after rook g1, rook g3, king h4, and king to f4, the king guards the rook, and after e5, rook g8, my king is stuck on the rim, I'm getting mated, the king is coming up the board to win the rook, and there's nothing I can do. So I think in this position, I forget if I flagged or I simply resigned the game here, but I ended up losing. Now, what is there to say about this game? Now, ultimately with this game, this is in some ways just as bad as the first game, which I didn't win, because this was a position which I should have drawn 99 times out of 100. But again, much like in Germany, I get low on time, and I simply can't keep it together at a critical moment. Now, on the upside, it's very clear that when I get Fabiano low on time, he does make more mistakes than ordinarily he would. And that's maybe the one positive takeaway from this. But overall, this is the first time I've played over the board in a while. Actually, outside the World Rapid and Blitz, I haven't played over the board since I'm not actually sure, in regular chess at least. So it's been quite a while, and I'm definitely disappointed by the result. But it is still only one day, and I'm hopefully optimistic that tomorrow I can play a little bit better in the next match when I play, I believe, against Levon Aronian, if I'm not mistaken. So, on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the first day of the Champions Showdown being held here in St. Louis, Missouri. If you are not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with more recaps in the coming days. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and have a great rest of your evening. See you soon. Bye.